This right here is my favorite thing ever in the history of forever. I think about this every day.
Oh, Dante, how you gonna get it inside that little hole right there?
You sound like someone else I know. Hello, you dirty potters. How are you today? I'm a little extra excited today because I checked my P.O. box this morning and someone sent me a giant bag of glaze. For those of you who don't know, I do have a P.O. box. It's down in the description below, but I rarely ever receive glaze like this because it's really difficult for like USPS and customs and things of that nature to send powder in the mail for obvious reasons. Half the time they don't let this kind of stuff through. Huge shout out to the person who sent this to me, Robin Boyd. She's the one who has been waiting forever and ever for me to check my P.O. box, and I'm so sorry. I check that thing like once every month because no one sends me stuff since no one knows about it. But then when I mention it, I get like a boatload of stuff. So in today's video, we are testing this glaze here. I actually don't know what it's called. I'm pretty sure it's some type of iron saturation glaze, but we're gonna sieve it. We're gonna test it on white clay. We're gonna test it on brown clay. And we're gonna see what this glaze is really made out of. Okay, that was pretty easy. Actually, that was extremely easy. Usually whenever I get a pre-mixed glaze or whenever I mix a glaze up myself, there's some form of resistance about it. I have to sieve it, there's chunks in it, things of that nature. This went like right through an 80 mesh sieve. On top of that, it was extremely easy to mix. I felt very little resistance. I'm so skeptical that this is what's supposed to happen that I'm gonna leave this out for a day or so and let the gravity increase, because at the moment it's a little bit watery. I can't figure out if that's my fault or it's just my inexperience with the glaze. So because it's summer in California right now, I'm gonna let this sit in the studio for a day, open. I'm gonna let all the water kind of evaporate into the air. I'm gonna check the gravity. Hopefully we can reach a good 1.3, 1.345, and then we're gonna test this on some porcelain clay and some brown clay. There's two things that I want to note about this glaze before we move on with the first test style. Is number one, it smells like a baka. It smells a little bit strange. I have no idea why. I've never had glaze that's pre-made from another country sent to me before. So this smells very, very, very strange to me. It almost smells more plastic than it does mineral. Number two, I wish the producer or whoever made this put some bentonite or some gum in this, because this stuff is very, very thin. I have to mix it like once every 10 seconds. If you notice, I keep stirring it with this brush. That's because I'm getting down to the bottom. This right here seems like a good application if I look at my brush right here. This seems pretty good. But I tried putting this on a test style earlier just to see if I could dip it in without mixing it and see how good it was. Nope, this stuff fell right off the test style. So this stuff really has to be mixed in. All right, let's do a white test style real quick just for safety. Let's glaze this brown test style right here. I've been keeping this one for a while. People really seem to like these dots on the handle, so I might put it in the store next time. And I also really want to glaze this double hump Japanese style gourd. I made this quite some time ago, but I haven't really had a glaze that I want to test on it, simply because it has so much texture that I wanted to give it a glaze that it deserves. So let's see if this glaze has any amount of texture to it by glazing this. This glaze has very little body. It's so wet. It doesn't stay in suspension for long. I'm resisting the urge to put bentonite in this so hard right now. I just want you potters to know that. That being said, after this test is done, so I don't mess the results by like doctoring it myself, I'm gonna put bentonite in this. You know what a good indicator of what I'm saying is true is that if you look on the side of the bucket where the water barely touched, it's not even sticking to the side of the bucket. Most of my glazes don't have this problem. Most of my glazes are very like, yep, there's a nice coat of glaze there, but this is usually the kind of texture that happens whenever the glaze doesn't have enough body or enough something to make it stick to a pot. Usually what you would see is something more, let's see if I can get one over here, something more like that. That is more of what you would see on a pot. Okay, as usual, before we put these in the kiln, let's review. This is a triple dipped porcelain test style. The kind of test styles that I like to do are usually triple dipped. So I dip it once and then I dip it twice here and I dip it a third time up to here. So you'll see 1, 2, and 3 layers. This here is a redstone clay body, what we'll be using for our brown clay. There's a bit of texture for the handle right here, but I don't think that matters. Usually, glazes turn out a bit different on darker clay bodies, especially if they have a bit of iron in them. And this clay body does have a bit of iron in it as well. So we're gonna see how this comes out on a brown test style. This is also a porcelain clay body, but there's a lot more texture on this than usual. I will say I do notice a bit of spotting when I glazed it, and I tried to overglaze this thing. Like I really gave it an extra coat of glaze, but I don't want to put more glaze here because if it melts over, I want to see if it'll cover that tiny little blemish right there. Sometimes it does, most of the time it doesn't, but I want to see how sticky this glaze is. I'm already noticing a couple of indicators that say this is not going to go well for that one little spot there, but I'm going to leave it alone and give it some good faith. We're going to put these in the kiln and we're going to see how they come out in a little bit. All right, now that the glaze is out of the kiln, let's take a look. Okay, so this is essentially just the color black. And when I translated it from the package, it said something about red, and I was like, oh, it might turn out a little bit red or oil spotty. Nope, it's essentially just the color black. The test style is on a stoneware clay body, so this test style is technically a stoneware grog clay body. I think it's B mixed with grog. It's not porcelain or porcelaneous, but the grog that we glazed is a porcelain clay body. This echoes throughout the entire episode. And just a little bit of Donte's like rant hour here, right? And I promise it won't be too long. I'll be going on rants on my Instagram and everything, but I promise you, I've been messing with this glaze for quite some time. I made a test style of this glaze with a lot of water inside of it. I made a secondary test style of this glaze with very little water inside of it. You can barely see any water in there as opposed to the other one. I doctored the gravity. I made sure the viscosity is good. I even did a test where I put some CMC gum inside of it to make it brushable. I brushed it on a bowl. The bowl came out gross, awful. The glaze smells bad. Anytime I would touch this glaze, after I applied it to a body, it would come off very, very easily. I think I have a clip somewhere that I saved, if I can save it for you. But this clip here is me glazing it twice, by the way. That's 2 layers. And as soon as I touched it with my human skin, with my human washed hands, the glaze just came right off. Even when I layered it more than once with something to make sure that it sticks to the body, at least I can get some type of glaze effect, it ended up like crawling off because it was either too thick or too thin. And I don't like working with this glaze. This glaze, it smells bad, it doesn't work very well. It doesn't give the color that it promises on the package, at least according to my translations. Like, it's just not that great. The one thing it does very good though, is it is a fantastic dark additive. This cup over here is my Lumos glaze put on top of the glaze that somebody sent me. Lumos on the top of this was a good call. My Lumos can turn almost any dark bad glaze into a really good melty glaze like this. My issue again is that the parts where I glazed and then you can see my thumbprint right there. You can like clear as day. That's exactly where I put my thumb. Most glazes, I would say should not, but do not, at least from my experience, do this so easily. At least good quality glazes, right? Like it never comes off that easy. And the spots in which it did stick, this is a brown clay body, but the spots in which it did stick, if it didn't come off by me simply touching it, right, didn't really stick too well. This is kind of like some sort of muted satin glaze. I didn't expect it to be shiny or glossy, but I expected it to not come off at the very touch of my hand. But just based off of my experience with other glazes, as soon as I realized that this glaze is probably not going to come out the red that I wanted it to come out, I started putting all the light melty glazes on it. And that's where this beautiful thing comes in. This is the gourd that I glazed with Lynette's Opal over this glaze that someone sent to my P.O. box. And I love it. I love it so much. There is a bit of crawling, again, because this glaze won't stick for anything on heaven or earth, but I do love this color. I love when stuff melts like this, but it still stays on the body. We got a little bit of crawling on the outside of the clay body for this porcelain gourd, but the inside of it is fantastic. Like, I looked on the inside and everything seems quite food safe. That is, if you would even use this for food. I mean, a long time ago, they would use stuff like this, like double hump Japanese gourds for alcohol and drink to keep on them, but I don't think we do that nowadays. And of course, because the glaze doesn't stick anywhere where the glaze is by itself and pure with no overglaze on it, it just doesn't stick to the body. You can see right there, it just simply will not stick to the body. And I messed with it 10,000 ways to Sunday. I'm telling you, this will not stick very well. I'm gonna give this glaze a Dirty Potter 1 out of 5. This glaze is gross. It smells bad. It doesn't work very well. It only plays with other glazes unless I develop those glazes to play very well with other glazes. Lynette's Opal and my Lumos are the two glazes that I save in my gambit where I'm like, all right, well, these glazes are gonna fix any dark issues that I have with the other glazes. I'm thankful that I've made glazes like that because otherwise it would have not gone well. But this one's a good one. This one's a keeper. Might give it to my mom. Who knows? Who knows what I'll do with it? She has enough pottery. I'm gonna put it in the store. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today, and thank you, Robin, for sending me this glaze. I think I remember having a conversation with Robin where she was like, "This glaze is bad. Maybe you can do something with it." No, I can't. This glaze is just bad. I would buy from somewhere else from now on if this is the quality of their glazes. I'm not trying to down bad the company. It might be a thing where like wherever this glaze comes from is like this is the standard, but in my experience this is not how I would prefer my glazes to work. And I make glazes as well as test them from Amico, you know. I'm trying to be a bit sensitive about it because this might just be where the glazes come out based on how they are or where they are on their minerals, and I don't want to be insensitive about it, but at the same time I've tested so many glazes and I know how to make glazes. And this is, I would not accept this from a handmade glaze, let alone a glaze from a company. So thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. This was kind of a one-off for our glaze reviews. Hopefully you like this kind of content. Put down in the comments below what glaze you would like for me to test out next, or if you want to send me more glaze, I will test it on camera for you. Thank you guys, and I will see you, Dirty Potters, next week.
Thank you for your patronage.
Oh, you know what it smells like? It smells kind of like someone set a bunch of Barbie and Ken dolls on fire and then left them there for 10 years to rot.